सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति। मौन व्याख्या प्रकटित परब्रह्म तत्त्वं युवानं वशिष्ठान्ते वसद्विषगणैः आवृत ब्रह्मनिष्ठैः आचार्य इन्द्रं करकलितचिन्मुद्रमानन्दरूपं स्वात्मा रामं मुदितवदनं दक्षिणामूर्तिमीडे वटविटपि समीपे भूमिभागे निषन्नं सकलमुनिजनानां ज्ञानदातारमारात् त्रिभुवनगुरुमीशं दक्षिणामूर्तिदेवं जननमरणदुःखच्छेददक्षं नमामि। चित्रं वटतरोर्मूले वृद्धा शिष्या गुरुर्युवा गुरोस्तु मौनं व्याख्यानं शिष्यास्तु सिन्न संशया निधये सर्वविद्यानां भिषजे भवरोगिणां गुरवे सर्वलोकानां दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। ॐ नमः प्रणवार्थाय शुद्धज्ञानैकमूर्तये निर्मलाय प्रशान्ताय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। ॐ विश्वं दर्पणदृश्यमाननगरी तुल्यं निजान्तर्गतं पश्यन्नात्मनि मायया बहिर्भूतं यथा निद्रया यत्साक्षात् कुरुते प्रबोधसमये स्वात्मानमेवाद्वयं तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः। श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये बीजस्यान्तरिवाङ्कुरो जगदिदं प्राङ्निर्विकल्पं पुनः मायाकल्पितदेशकालकलना वैचित्र्यचित्रीकृतं मायावीव विजृम्भयत्यपि महायोगी वयस्वेच्छया तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः। श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये यस्यैव स्फुरणं सदात्मकम् असत्कल्पार्थकं भासते साक्षात् तत्त्वमसीति वेदवचसा यो बोधयत्याश्रितान् यत्साक्षात्करणात् भवेन्न पुनरावृत्तिर्भवाम्भोनिधौ तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः। श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये नानाचित्रघटोत्तरसप्तमहा दीपप्रभाभास्वरं ज्ञानं यस्य तु चक्षुरादिकरण द्वारा बहिस्पन्दते जानामीति तमेव भान्तमनुभाति एतत् समस्तं जगत् तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः। श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये देहं प्राणमपीन्द्रियानपि चलां बुद्धिं च शून्यं वधूः स्त्रीबालान्दजडोपमास्तुहमिति भ्रान्ताभिषं वादिनः मायाशक्तिविलासकल्पितमहा व्यामोहसंहारिणे तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः। श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये राहुग्रस्तदिवाङ्करेन्दुसदृशः Maya samachadana Sanmatra karanopasamharanata Yo bhut sushuptah puman Pragaswapsamiti prabodha samaye Yapratyabhigyayate Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namaidam Shri Dakshinamurtaye Balyadishu api jakridadishu tatha Sarvasvavasthasvapi Vyavrittasvanuvartamanamaham Ityantasfurantam sada Swatmanam prakatikaroti bhajatam Yo mudraya bhadraya Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namaidam Shri Dakshinamurtaye Vishwam Pashyati Karyakaranataya Swaswami Sambandhataha Shishyacharyataya Tathaiva Pitra Putratyatmana Bhedataha Swapne Jagrati Vaya Esha Purusho Maya Paribhramitaha Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namaidam Shri Dakshinamurtaye Urambhamsya nalo nilombar Maharnartho himamshuh puman Ityabhati characharatmakamidam Yasyaiva murtyashtakam Nanyat kinchana vidyate vimshatam Yasmat parasmat vibho Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namaidam Shri Dakshinamurtaye Sarvatmatvamiti spruti kritamidam Yasmadamishmunstave Tenasya shravanat tadarthamananat Dhyanat cha sankirtanat Sarvatmatvamaha vibhuti sahitam Syadishwaratvam swataha Siddhye tat punarashtada parinatam Jaishwaryam avyahatam. So we are doing the second stotram, Bijasya Antarivankura Jagadidam, etc. And as you know, the title of this verse, the purpose of this verse is that Atma Mula Karanam. So this you should try to understand what it means, Mula Karanam. We've gone through that just to review it. And by the way, just to say a word or two about this book by Mahadeva Shastri. And so I think that in general, I was looking at it. It's the translations are not bad. It's pretty good. But he's a Shastri, not a Swami. And so he does make some basic mistakes. As an example, the title of the first stotram he gives as Atma as the ego. It's not true. Atma Pratyak Swarupam. So that was the title that we studied before. That was the concept, not just the title, but just this principal concept that we studied on the first stotram was Atma Pratyak Swarupam. So the meaning of the Atma Pratyak Swarupam means, the meaning is that it is never manifest as it is. You can only see its effect but you can never see it directly. Like you cannot see yourself directly unless you have a mirror. So the ego, which is the human being, and the ahankara, is in fact the reflection of the real thing, and therefore it is subject to all the problems of being reflected. So to say that Atma as the ego is just the opposite. I just happened to notice it. I didn't know that. So, we have to be careful. But in general, I think that the translations are okay, pretty good actually. Similarly, the concept of the second which we are studying now, is Atma as the first cause. It's not completely wrong, but it is not very accurate either. It means Atma as the original cause. There's a difference between first and second and third and fourth, as really the only one, as the ultimate cause. That should be the English translation of the second one, which is what is called Mula Karanam. Mula Karanam, Mula means the root. So its root is not the first cause of the plant. It is the cause of the plant. And so similarly, I think we have to be careful about that. But I think, so what I would recommend that you do is the following. I am, as you know, not taking each of the Manasa Ullasa verses per se because of the interest of time, and I think the way we should really study it, we should look at it conceptually. But at the same time, what you may want to do is to revise the Manasa Ullasa, perhaps through the English translations. So make that as into a habit, perhaps just on your own time. This will strengthen your understanding. I will not take it each verse at a time, because in the first stotram there were 30 verses, and in the second one I believe there are 56. We won't have time to do all of that. So I will cover it from a conceptual standpoint, taking groups of verses that have a similar concept and then highlighting that. But I think you may want to look into strengthening your understanding by quickly going through at least the English translations. And for those of you that understand Hindi, then of course the real book to study is Swami Maheshananji's Manasa Ullasa, which is also very difficult. It is not simple Hindi. It is just very highly Sanskritized and very terse. So if you knock your head and don't get much out of it, it takes me a long time to study it over and over again. I've probably done the whole thing 2 or 3 times. It's not easy. But I do think that it'll be good as a goal for you, if you want, to revise it in terms of the English translations that we go. Okay, so we are now taking the second paragraph, the second stotram, which is Bijasya Antarivankuraha Jagat Idam Prang Nirvikalpam Punaha. And so during this Manasa Ullasa verses, each one of the concepts will be taken up. And I will make sure that I highlight each of the concepts, even though not verse by verse, but conceptually it will be done. So, why is it important? And in particularly in this second verse, it may also happen in some of the other verses, but very much so in this verse, a lot of the alternative schools of thought are highlighted and rebutted. Their arguments are taken up and then finally rebutted. And as you know, the reason for doing this is not so that you want to attain academic superiority. It's not as though you're putting them down. None of that at all. Absolutely not. It is really a very personal business. We have an issue at our hand. We need to understand what is being said and to understand it in such a way that my life becomes imbibed in it and there is a transformation in my life so that I can live. Otherwise, it remains as a bookish knowledge. This is the objectives that we have. In following through this objective, the alternative schools of thought do us a favor, really. Because I think very few of us are as smart, as intelligent as some of the acharyas of the alternative schools of thought, like Patanjali, Gautama, and Kanada. These are very brilliant people. They're not easy to duplicate. So they raise objections that we should listen to as a way for me to reflect my own doubts about myself. So as an example, we saw that the Vaisheshikas, we've already done the first 7 verses, where the Vaisheshikas, Paramanu Karanavada is given. And the way to look at it is exactly the scientific view of today. The current science is a variation on Vaisheshikas and Nayayikas. There are some differences between them. We won't go into a lot of detail on that. They're very small differences. I've already given you, remember the 3 groupings that I gave you. So Vaisheshikas and Nayayikas was one grouping. They are conceptual cousins in a way. Then we had Sankhyas and Yogas as the second grouping of conceptual cousins. And then we had the Purva Mimamsa and Uttara Mimamsa. The Vaidikas, which are Karmakandas and Jnanakandas, is the third conceptual cousins. So that we should really try to understand. But anyway, going back to the main theme that I wanted to highlight, the Vaisheshikas reflect the scientific view. And we will actually go through in verses number, I think what I want to do, hopefully in this time, I want to very quickly give you an overview of what is contained up to the alternative schools of thought and bring it up to how we answer them. And the answer also will not be in great detail. I just want to give you a sketch of the thinking. But given that we have assigned ourselves 3 or 4 classes per each one of these verses, stotras, that's about all we can afford. And it's not as though, it's not as though we are going to get a good understanding of it. But nevertheless, we need to give you an introduction to the whole thing. Otherwise, this will take us. We don't have the time. If we have classes every day and we're living in an ashram, then we could do all of this. But I think we'll get a good sketch of the whole thing. So given that, we're going to move quickly to give you an idea of what the alternative schools of thought are saying. So going back to, I didn't finish my thought, which I started last week also. So my doubt is this. See, consider this. Just look at this. When I am trying to evaluate myself, I only evaluate myself with things that I am aware of. Because that's all I can do. I cannot go outside of the things that I am objectifying. And so my whole thinking is in terms of things that I can objectify. That includes my own evaluation. And that's why that evaluation is totally wrong. Why? Because then I can make a distinction between the world and myself as being different. I am here doing this, talking, and the world is listening to me, the class is listening to me. So I'm making that distinction. And I'm evaluating you very similar to the way I'm evaluating myself, which is I have to look at my thinking, I have to look at my body, look at my physiology, and so who am I? And that's how I evaluate myself. And Vedanta says, unfortunately, that is useless. It is just like you are evaluating your reflection in muddy water. And yes, it should have some semblance to it, but nevertheless, it is completely wrong. And so, this is the issue. And the Vaisheshikas, which means scientists, also evaluate everything in terms of what they can objectify. So Paramanuvada means that, hey, everything seems to be built out of particles. Particles means that they must have some form, and they must have some gunas, some qualities, and they have some interconnectability. And yes, we can figure out everything. As we were said, there are a lot of scientists that can say we don't need Ishvara. We can figure it all out. But if the scientists forget to understand how did it come there to begin with. So it was already there. Already means how. No, let's ignore that. Main thing is that we can completely figure out how the world works, how the sun does activity is, and how the moon revolves. And yeah, we are very smart. We're working on it. There's a couple of things we're not sure of, but I think we're pretty much done. This has been going on through the ages. And so the main thing is that I go along with it. Because my thinking is also the same, that I need to evaluate myself. This is why you just say, how are you, you ask someone, how are you doing? What is that person going to answer? I'm doing okay. Some problems, some good things, some bad things, and so on. That's it. From what you observe, you make an evaluation about yourself. You don't know that all of that is completely wrong. And so the Vaisheshikas do us a favor by structuring the way of evaluating yourself. And so then they come up with all kinds of answers, and the answers are all wrong. Because Atma does not consist of particles. It's not particles at all. The reflection consists of particles, but the original does not. And so I think our objective should be, really, I think by the end of this course, you should have a pretty good idea of what Vedanta, what Acharya, what the Vedas are saying about you, where the mistakes are, and you should have a pretty good idea so that you can describe it to someone. Write it all down in your own thoughts. And so these are the basic tenets of Vedanta. And those tenets should be very, very clear to you. And it is otherwise, you are not a doctor. You're just some pharmacist. And pharmacist goes with symptoms only, but not a doctor. If you want to be a doctor to solve the disease of life, then you should study the medical science about yourself. And so in these 10 verses, we have the kernels of what the medical science is. So in the second one, Atma Moola Karanam, So just a summary on that, and we will of course go back to the main verse later on. But what it is saying is, you don't need particles to generate this Srishti. You don't need, in fact, particles is only with respect to Vaisheshikas and Nayayikas. You don't need anything other than yourself to create this creation. And the best example of that is the dream. The dream is created by you without any external help. You have enough things in your own mind, in your own things, that allow you to construct this experience. So this is the meaning of Atma Moola Karanam. You don't need anything. And all these schools of thought says that's not true, you need everything. And they say this dream, don't forget about that, that's not real. That's not real. That is some strange phenomena, just to give you some rest and so on. That actually Vedanta says dream doesn't give you any rest. It really doesn't. You can get up in the morning worse off because you had some bad dreams that really scare the heck out of you. So you have papa and punya and all the effects of it even in dreams. So in fact, what Vedanta says, this is what we're studying in the Mandukya Upanishad, that really speaking, you do get some rest in deep sleep, but not in the Swapnavastha. The Swapnavastha and the Jagratavastha are identical, pretty much identical. So the other schools of thought don't think that. They said, forget about the dream. But now we have to construct what is this made out of? And we say, no. First of all, you cannot ignore dream. It's a very strong signal. Like, when you are, they say that in India, cows are stolen all the time. Because the cow is a very valuable animal. And so in the middle of the night, somebody steals a cow. And then you are left behind to say, where did my cow go? So there the experts see the hoof marks. Which direction? And in India fortunately is a muddy country. They don't have paved roads all over the place. You can tell which way they went. So they follow it and hopefully they can get to the cause of it. So this is what is called lingam. So lingyate anena iti lingam. One, jnayate. Lingyate means jnayate, by which something is known. A strong hint is what you should follow. So in Vedanta, the dream is a lingam. Vedanta says that don't ignore it. There is a huge advantage in looking at the dream. Huge advantage. Because what happens in a dream is that it frightens you, but then it goes away into nothingness. You created it and it's gone. And because the dream and the Jagrata Avastha are similar, this is exactly what is going to happen to you. If you stay with this study and really have the Shraddha, you will discover that all of your perceived issues of life of them will just go away, disappear. They might go away a little more slowly than the dream, because the dream you constructed it, and in the Jagrata Avastha there are some responsibilities and so on. But for all intents and purposes, it will go away completely. So therefore, the example of a dream is a very important one. And so our rebuttal, we have already given you the essence of what we are studying in the second verse. Our rebuttal is Atma Moola Karana. You don't need particles, you don't need anything outside or anything. It is all generated from inside. Nevertheless, we have to kind of detail it out, each one of them. What are you saying? Just so that we can understand how our mind also works, very similar to that. So that's the background to this. So we have already done up to verse number 8, right? So if we now look at verse number 9, 10 and 11 and grouped under a single conceptual headline called Paramanu Karanata Vada Pariharaha. So that is the conceptual title given by Swami Maheshananji, which is Paramanu Karanata Vada Parihara, means the negation including the reasons of the Vaisheshika view. And very briefly, because I have a lot to cover, I'll just give you some brief aspects of this. So, the Vaisheshika says that Karya, and everybody says the same thing, not Vaisheshika. This is a common truth in all reasonings. And the common truth is that Karya, that Karana is inherent in the effect. The cause is superior to its effect, and the Karya comes out of the Karana, and the Karya cannot have anything different from the Karana. So the Karana, it is what is called Antargatam. It is within the Karana alone. It is not outside of that. And so therefore what it means is that the cause must inhere, you must see the presence of Karana in the Karya. Like in a wave, you must see water. You cannot suddenly say there is mud in there. Muddy, it may be muddy water, but not essential. The essential part is water, and it must be there. So we take this and ask the person. We say, listen, you have a seed that becomes a blossom. And the blossom, Ankuraha means a bud, is totally different from the seed. Totally different. We don't see the presence of seed in the Ankura. So how can you say that this violates the very principle of your... In other words, you say that the flower consists of some particles. And we agree with that. So every flower is made out of some molecules, peculiar molecule, and those molecules are made out of atoms and so on. And okay, so then we say, where is the molecule in the seed? Can you show us the molecule in the seed? And in fact, another thing that the Vaisheshikas believe in is that the Paramanu are atindriyaha, means they are not seen by the indriyas. They are very subtle. We cannot see them. Now what has happened is that the unseen seed, which we agree with, we say that okay, fine, Paramanus should be Atindriyas. If that is the case, the Ati Indriya should stay. So that means all of a sudden the Ati Indriya means beyond Indriyas, not under the purview of my sense organs. But all of a sudden the Paramanus become Indriya Janakaha. Now all of a sudden they become a flower. How does that happen? See the argument? The argument is that if you say the Paramanu is Ati Indriya, and he says yes, then the Ati Indriya should stay, just like water stays in the wave. So to that they say, well, we're not sure. See, this is the question of pramana. Pramana means what is the proof? And so you cannot fudge it and say, oh, this just happens, it's okay, we don't have to get into it. No. We have to know precisely exactly what happens. Then the person comes back and he says, wait a second. Okay, fine. We understand that you are attacking me by saying that the Paramanus are not, were Ati Indriyas and suddenly you become within the Indriyas. But where about your Atma? Your Atma is also not there. Didn't you say that you are the Atma, and you already said it is Pratyak Swarupam, it is never made into a visibility, and now you are saying that the Atma has become Anatma. Didn't you say the same thing? So we say no. That is the difference. And so this is, of course, an important point which you should be, if you want to write down the basic tenets of Vedanta all over, this is one of those things. As you know, we've already talked about it, it's nothing new. We say that Atma is Sat Swarupam and Chit Swarupam. It is the nature of isness and knowledge. Knowledge or light, either one of them. The similar kinds of a thing. And everything is within the Atma. How is everything within the Atma? You say this is a flower which used to be a seed and now it has so on and so forth. Where is the Atma in there? Atma is there because the isness, the Sat Swarupam, is always in the Atma. And the flower enjoys isness. So, you cannot suddenly snatch my isness away from me because it's just like saying the wave, as long as the wave is not there, it's only water. But as soon as the wave becomes a wave, it loses its waterness. It cannot happen. So really speaking, the isness of any vastu is the original isness of the Atma. It's just that my thinking is, and the reason it confuses me is because I am not clear about the fact that the Atma always is. Why am I not clear about it? Because I am confusing my ahankara with the Atma. So therefore, I have difficulty in understanding that the Atma is not just here and not there. Consciousness just is. And it is not just me, it is the total consciousness. Only one consciousness. And the one consciousness is. And in that, it's like the water in all the waves. In that, the wave enjoys specificity. That the wave is here. Fine. But in the process, it loses its own identity. And so that's why this is the answer to the Vaisheshika. It says, you also don't have presence of the Karana in the Karya. We said, no, we do. And if you think that I am not answering your question, you are wrong, because you are taking me as the body, mind, as the Atma. Yes, that is not there in the flower. Because the flower is another wave, I am another wave. But both of them are in water. So the isness, and also the isness, there are things in isness, and things can disappear, but the isness doesn't disappear. This I have to see with my own thinking, my own mind, my own meditation. You cannot dismiss the isness. In Brihadaranyaka, there is a very important verse which says, Nahi Nahi gosh, my memory is... No. Nahi. Anyway, let me give you the English translation. It's amazing. I'm not in touch with these things every day, so it just doesn't come right away. The drishti, the seeingness of the seer never disappears. Drashtuhu drishtehe, I think that's what it is. Nahi drashtuhu drishtehe viparilopaha vidyate. This is the Brihadaranyaka. This is a fact. And at first I have difficulty seeing this. But the more I see it, I say, wow, yes, this is correct. You cannot see any vastu unless you are there. You cannot see it, and no vastu is unless somebody is there. You see? You might say, I remember this used to floor me in the beginning, that there is a vastu that I am not seeing. How is that there? Like some country in Africa. I've never been there. But that vastu is to be seen by someone. And the Atma is everywhere. So the vastu has to be seen by someone. In other words, you cannot have a thing without the seer. Not possible. So therefore, the Atma, so we reply to the Vaisheshikas, that unlike you, whose Paramanus may or may not be there, that's not the problem with us, because Karana indeed inheres in all Karyas. My consciousness is there everywhere. Satyajnana. Satsvarupam means that it is not borrowed Sat. It is not reflected Sat, it's the original Sat. So, like that, this dialogue keeps on happening, and so, for example, in the 9, 10, and 11, this concept is talked about. Okay? And in fact, in verse number 12, so in these Manasa Ullasa verses, this kind of dialogue is being given not in a in a segmented way. It goes throughout, back and forth. So, for example, the next one, number 12, is called Vivarta Karanatvam. Vivarta Karanatvam. So, this is, of course, another very important Vedantic concept that you should be very familiar with. So, I mentioned one, which is that the Sat, and so everything is really nothing but a reflection of the Atma. So when you say everything is a reflection of the Atma, that means Atma alone is the original Vastu, and everything else is a reflection. Why? Because you cannot exist without the Atma. And so it is a borrowed Atma. You depend upon the Atma. You do not have an independent existence. So for that reason, Atma alone is. Everything else is a reflection. So there is no Dvaita. There is only Advaita. So this is what the concept is in Vedanta. Now, another important concept related to this that one should be very clear about. All of this should really form your thinking as you represent Vedanta to yourself or to others. Should be very clear about that. Is what is called Vivartatvam. So Vivartatvam, Vivarta means change without a change. Change without a change. And in this dialogue that happens, and I'm just going so general that I'm not even bothering to give you the specifics of which of the Manasa Ullasa verses are, and so on and so forth. And in fact, it's really not. It's one of a defense of Mahadeva Shastri, where he says Atma is the first Karanam. I can see that. That's why I said it is not totally wrong. Atma is the ego is totally wrong. But Atma as the first cause is not totally wrong. It is not that accurate, but it is not totally wrong. Why do I say that? Because it is argued by the other schools of thought that, wait a second, if you say that your presence as the Atma is there everywhere, then why is it that a milk becomes a yogurt and they are totally different from each other? There is no presence of the pleasant taste of the milk in the yogurt. The sweetness of the milk is gone. So it has what is called Parinamavada. So Parinamavada means one where the original form is lost and has taken on a different form. It's called Parinamavada. And so they know about what we say about Vivartavada. Vivartavada means that one that does not change even though it changes. And the example of that is the water in the wave, or the gold and the ornaments, or the dreamer and the dream. There, even though there is a huge dream, and in fact that is the same thing will eventually be for us also. For the Atma, I have all these experiences of life, but I never change. I am still the same Atma. In fact, this will be taken up in more detail in the verse number 7. Balyadishu api jagradadishu tatha sarvasu avasthasu api vyavrittasu anuvartamanam aham ityanta sphurantam sada swatmanam prakati karoti bhajatam yo mudraya bhadraya. So there it says that it will say in more detail when we come to it, that in all of your experiences of life, whether you are balya or jagrada versus swapnavastha, all changes. You are always there. You are saying, I am young. Not a different person was young. That can happen if I show you a picture of you when you were like 5 years old and you say, no, that's not me. You say, yep, that's you. You have to finally admit, oh my God, how different I looked. I looked. You see, it's the same I. In fact, life is not possible. Look at this Shrishti of Ishvara. Life is not possible unless there is sameness in all the changes. Like, for example, supposing you are totally different when you wake up. You have nothing to do with your previous one. Would life be possible? You'll be bumping each other, brand new people, don't know anyone. There's no memory. So what an interesting thing that we have changes without a change. So anyway, going back to what the Vaisheshikas say, they say, wait a second, we don't see any Vivartavada in the change from a milk to a yogurt, like you can from in a water and wave, but there is nothing like that in there. So how can you say there is Vivartavada? So to that we say, you are right. Why? Because we think that ultimately it is Vivartavada, but for transactional purposes there is Parinamavada. There is Parinamavada, but that is for Vyavaharika Sat. So you see the difference. So we accept Paramanus for Vyavaharika Sat. We accept it. But we do not do it as the ultimate truth. And why is it that we cannot accept it? How can you say that? Because as Satchitananda, everything is Vivartavada. So try to understand this. So as if there are, so look at this, another way to look at it. If there are various things in a reflection, then with respect to each other, they are indeed different. This is what is called transactional reality. This is what's called, our Vyavaharika Sat. So under Vyavaharika Sat, there are reflections and they are all different from each other. But really speaking, as reflections, all are basically non-different from the original. So what that means is that the original never changes, even if there are copies of it, even if there are reflections of it. So ultimately, Satchidananda is unchanged. And in fact, everything that is seen as a vyavahara ultimately is not possible without Satchidananda, which itself doesn't change. So this is the essence of what is called Vivartavadatvam. So the verse number 12 talks about that to a certain extent. Then in verse number 13, so in the what is pointed out is that the three basic powers that we have, three shaktis that we have when each one of us is born, one is Jnana Shakti, one is Kriya Shakti, and the third one is Ichha Shakti. Everyone has these three things. Even animals have it. And the trees also have it too, in a very muted way. And so it's much more easier to see in the animals than human beings. So there, each one of us is born with a desire. I got to do something. Then you have the knowledge, awareness, reflected awareness. Here I am, here's my ichha, I've got to do this. And then you also have the ability to follow through with the kriya. This is common to all three of them. Just this morning I was watering some new plants that I have put down. And there were some birds around me. It was fascinating to watch these little things. How busy they are. They're always doing something, looking around, and going from branch to branch. You sometimes see them and say, "My goodness, what a life." I don't know how they sleep during the night, and the first thing in the morning they get up. And they've got children to feed, they've got themselves to feed. A fascinating thing. And so this bird also has Ichha Shakti. It has Jnana Shakti, and it has Kriya Shakti, all three of them. But here it says, as part of saying that the Atma, Satchid Atma, has to be there in everything in life, is that all three of these Shaktis cannot be without a Shaktiman, which is Chetana Vastu. Shaktiman. So the Shakti means that any power must be resident in. So when you say it's red, the red is a Shakti, but what is the Vastu? Red what? So that is the Chetana Vastu. And all of this is to prove either, this is what I was saying, it's not structured in a very clean way. So whenever some objection is raised, then the answer is given. But it is heading towards the fact that Atma Moola Karana. That's what it is talked about. So that's number 13. Jnana Kriya Shaktayoho Chetana Ashrayata. Now, the Pradhana, Sankhya, the Sankhya's way of looking at things is taken up briefly and discarded. And why it is done here is because Sankhya says, by the way, one other thing before we go to Sankhya, the Vaisheshikas and Nayayikas, again the old style scientists, they say, and as the modern scientists also are saying, it's exactly the same. I'm really struck by it. I'm discovering more and more as I more study our old literature that they are the original scientists. They say that the Atma means you and I, is not Chetana. We are not conscious. This is a huge issue which is really how we are born into. We think of consciousness as a property, as a guna. So we think of it, just like, you say, I have two hands, and I have two legs, and I have, a torso, a chest, and I also have consciousness. That's it. So this consciousness is not me. So we ask then, if you are not consciousness, then who are you? Well, I'm this body, and Vaisheshika say the same thing. So before going back to the Sankhya, I just want to mention this. So the Vaisheshikas say that the Atma is Jadavastu. And when the Jadavastu comes in contact with the mind, it becomes conscious. Huge implications, huge problems in doing this. But they believe it. What are the problems? Where was the mana before? Manaha, where was the mind before? And how is it generated? And is the consciousness temporary? That means if you disconnect it, will it go away? Yes, that happens in the death. And so there's huge dialogue between, we said no. Consciousness is not a property, that is the real vastu. Everything else is a property. Swami Dayananda used to say that. We say, golden chain. So when you say golden chain, which is the noun and which is the property? In the saying that is a golden chain, chain is the vastu and goldenness is the property. It's just the opposite. Swamiji says, really what we should say is chainy gold. Chainy gold. Silvery, something. Anyway, chainy gold. That's the right thing to do. But in our vyavahara, we reverse what is the vastu, which is the guna. So we say no. What happens is that we are the vastu is Atma, Satchidananda, consciousness, awareness, which is always there. And the property is that it is reflected in something or the other. By itself, without changing, it appears as something else. One of the basic tenets of Vedanta that we should be very clear about. So that was the Vaisheshika view. Going back to the Sankhya. So the Sankhyas have a very funny situation. They feel that they say the Atma is conscious. It is conscious. But there are multiple Atmas. Multiple Atma. Everyone is conscious. You're also conscious, I'm also conscious. Your consciousness is different than my consciousness. But the Prakriti, the the entire nature of tendencies, Rajoguna, Tamoguna and Sattvaguna, that's all the common for everybody. They've got their very own funny consciousness. They made multiple Atmas and single Prakriti. Anyway, so, and also the Sankhyas, another very, and I'll try to actually, one of these days when I have time, I'll try to summarize this in a table for you to see. Or you can read some books also, but I don't see any good books on this topic, so I don't know. Anyway, another thing that the Sankhya's say is that we don't need Ishvara. We don't need Ishvara. So we can figure it all out, just like Stephen Hawkins also says, that we can figure it out. Why do we need God? What has God got to do with it? Because we can explain to you how Prakriti works. There are multiple Atma and it explains everything. We say no. It doesn't explain everything. You have not thought through the whole thing. And not. So this is what is called, in number 14, Nirishvara Pradhana Karanata Vada Parihara. Parihara means that it is removed. What is removed? Karanata Vada. What kind of a Karanata? Pradhana Karanata Vada. So the Pradhana means is this single Prakriti. And Nirishvara means one which is without a God. The Pradhana, which is the Mula Karanam, and which doesn't need God, that is the Karana. We say no, Parihara. So this is number 14 that looks into the Pradhana. And then I haven't quite gone through to see why number 15 and 16 are inserted here at this point. I was going through the notes and I'm not positive why it is there, but anyway, it must have a relevance, otherwise it is never taken up. It is not random, it is my non-understanding why it is there at this point. So there is a discussion of what is called Nirvikalpa Savikalpa Bhedena Jnanasya Dvaividyam. And I know what the direction we are driving at. All I'm not sure is why this discussion at this point. Anyway, what the discussion is the distinction between what is called Savikalpa and Nirvikalpa. So Nirvikalpa means one where the expression has not yet taken place. Like, for example, you can say that before the waves came up in a windy ocean, before the winds came up in an ocean, it is Nirvikalpa, water. Then, once the waves came up, it is Savikalpa. Vikalpa means changes, differences. So, Vikalpa Sahavartate. The one that is there with Vikalpa is called Savikalpa. And Nirvikalpa means there is no Vikalpa. So what we say, that Savikalpa and Nirvikalpa are not two different things. They are how you view it. It is the same water. But if it appears to be formful, then it is Savikalpa. If it becomes quiet, it becomes Nirvikalpa. But this is also in the direction is to prove the, in that way, the Vivartavada. You see, is the proving of the Vivartavada. So that point is given here. And Then I was reading it in number 16. It talks about sankalpadi bhedena savikalpasya nana vidhatvam. Nana vidhatvam. So sankalpa bhedana means that people have different ideas. I think I want to do it this way. I want to do it that way. No, this is not right. This is wrong. This is my idea. This is your idea. All these bhedas are nothing but the bheda of the original knowledge, consciousness. I am right, consciousness. You are wrong, consciousness. You are wrong, consciousness. I am right, consciousness, or the other way around. All of them are nothing but consciousness alone. So he says, this is what we think we should do, is not compartmentalize. So you should see that this is all expressions of Vivartavada, how knowledge and consciousness remains the same, even though the expression of it may be different from one or the other. This is the way to look at it. This is what Vedanta is all about. As opposed to the other schools of thought that come up with their own explanations of this is how differences are. So, actually I have a typo in numbers 17, 18 and 19. So it should be pramana. It should be not the na, but should be na. I'll correct it. So here, just to give you one other thought, here, where is it? So what happens is, so there are two words that you should think about. One is called pramana, and the other one is called prameya. Sorry, I forgot I could have written it down. But pramana and prameya mean the following. Pramana means the means of knowledge is called pramana. So in 17, 18 and 19, different ways of knowing by different schools of thought are presented. Again, I won't go into the details of which one it is. You can actually read this yourself. So, for example, starting from the very beginning, there is what is called Charvakas. That are not even considered seriously. Charvaka means the people who say, just enjoy life. There's nothing else that needs to be done. Who knows if we're going to be alive in the next life or not? This is all poppycock. Okay? And if you want to cheat someone, cheat someone. It doesn't really matter. Just have fun. Drink, eat, and be merry. And really, body is the only thing that matters. Your own experiences really matter. All this about punya and papa and mind and this, that or the other, and it doesn't make any sense at all. This is what is called charvaka. And so there, they don't even accept any fine ways of knowing. Like, for example, we say anumana and arthapati and all those kinds of things. They say, forget it. What you see is what you have. And don't give me anything more than that. From there, different schools of thought accept different ones. Vedanta and also a few others accept 6 different ways of knowing. And so those are pratyaksha, which is the through our sense organs, anumana, which is reasoning based on it. So if you see smoke, there must be fire. You cannot say, I don't know how the Charvakas believe it. I have no idea how they say. They feel there's fire only if I see it. Hey, it may be too late by the time you see fire. You should better believe it right now. This is called Anumana. Then Arthapatti is a difficult one to understand, but it means multi-step Anumana. Multi-step Anumana means you cannot really directly reason it, but it still is true. The classic example given is there is a Pandita in a temple, Mahant. He is the main pujari in a temple, and as some of the pujaris are, he is stout. He eats a lot. And what he says is, I do not eat any food. I don't eat any food. You ask him about prasada, he says, this is for you. I don't eat anything. So this is what is called Arthapatti. If he does not eat, you cannot be overweight without eating. You cannot get overweight by air. So we say that fellow, when he goes home, he must have a big meal. So this is what is called Arthapatti. That is also a pramana. Then, so we have three of them. Pratyaksha, Anumana, Arthapatti. Another one is Anupalabdhi. Anupalabdhi means the absence of something. You don't need to have a presence of something. You can ask somebody, hey, was he there? He says, I don't know. What do you mean by you don't know? Didn't you see him there? No, I didn't see him, but I don't know whether he was there or not. That's not possible. You can definitely say he was not there in the class. So this is called Anupalabdhi. So these are 5, and the last one is 4. So Pratyaksha, Anumana, Arthapatti, Upamana, yes. So and then the 4th one was Anupalabdhi, and the 5th one is Upamana. Upamana means a valid comparison. Like Swami Dayananji used to say that if you go to some of the African countries, there is this animal, what's it called?
Wildebeest.
Huh?
Wildebeest.
Wildebeest, yes. It looks like a cow. And so when you go there and you say, yes, must be wildebeest. So it's called Upamana. And the last one is Shabda Pramana, by words. And this is in Vedanta the most important. Why? Because even though you have Pratyaksha, you have Anumana and all that, if there is somebody here and he happens to be or she happens to be the president of the Delhi, just got elected in Delhi in the election, and he happens to be here, we will never know. Unless somebody says, do you know this person? Just elected into the MP from Delhi. Then say, oh, really? How was the election? It must have been tough. It's called Shabda Pramana. These are the 6. So there are 2 things to be there. I'll just wrap it up real quickly. So the 17, 18 and 9 talk about the pramana differences in the various schools of thought. So if you want to see who believes in what and so on and so forth. And this is not that important because we should really see what we are saying. But if as a curiosity, if you want to look at it. Then in the next 2 segments, number 13 and 14, in number 13, the Manasa Ullasa verses number 20 to 30, and in Manasa Ullasa number 14, 31 to 41, talk about not pramana but prameya. Prameya means not how to tell whether something is not there, but what is there. What is the object of the pramana? Like you can say that I can tell you, I know for a fact. So you say, you know for a fact is okay, I believe you, but know for a fact what? Then you can say, I know for a fact that it is going to rain tomorrow. So this would be called anumana. But that it is going to rain is called prameya. The vastu is called prameya. So this is very interesting because the Vaisheshikas are spending a lot of detail about how they see this world to be. What is the constituent of the world? And similarly, the next one, Sankhya Mata says, what is the content of the world? So these are all given there. I'm just giving you the reference to it. I won't go in that in the class. We should more worried about what we say. But nevertheless, it is interesting that these guys are very smart. They have really analyzed it. They've come to the wrong conclusion because they missed a crucial piece of information, that they are everything. But at least they spent a lot of time analyzing. And so these are all given in here. So this particular verse does a very good job, the Manasa Ullasa explanation of examining the various schools of thought in thoroughness. So at that I'll stop, and then we will, I think maybe might take 2 classes, maybe 1 class to finish verse number 2. So I'll try to go through that as quickly as possible so we can go on. So with that I say a prayer and then any questions that you have. Om Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Shri Guru Pyo Namaha Hari Om.
This atomic theory and quantum theory talked about here, it came much after Sureshacharya. How Sureshacharya can refer to atomic theory here?
No, the Paramanu, the Vaisheshikas have been there for a long time. Oh yeah, this is much older than Sureshwacharya.
So the thought of an atom existed?
Oh yes, absolutely. Particles and so on and so forth. It's just the Western people, they just don't have any idea. All of this was well thought through, absolutely. Yeah, this is very old. Very, I don't know how, but it wouldn't surprise me if we're talking about thousands, millenniums, many millenniums. Yeah.
I did a Google search, I don't remember, but they have given the time scale of all different people.
Well, the problem with that is that, this, what is called the pretty Padika, what is it called?
Yeah.
Where you contribute your own... Wikipedia, thank you. The problem with Wikipedia is that also has a lot of human content. And histories are biased, and so on. I used to, when I would go to India, the one book that I would read would be historical aspect of India. And finally I had to throw them all away because they are so wrong. I don't even read them. This fairies, people have no idea. And we are very poor in recording history anyway. We don't care. So the truth about history is very difficult to say, you know. So yeah, you can do some Google search, but whether or not it has authenticity, we don't know.
The principle among them is even like, is Taj Mahal or Qutub Minar, what origin is it from? Was it made by the Mughals or not?
Yeah, we don't know. Yeah, they say that the Taj Mahal was constructed over semi-completed.
Tejo Mahal.
Yeah, there was some temple and who knows. But that's very recent, so that may not be true. But the ancient one, it's not easy to tell.
Aryan invasion theory.
Yeah. So I think that, it's interesting, going back to the politics of India, that people accuse Modi ji of rewriting history, when in fact it is to correct the history, But everyone is against him, not everyone, but all the historians and so on and so forth, that, why do you want to go back and, like for example, the names of the temples, Hyderabad and Ahmedabad, these are all Muslim names that came rather recently. We should go back to the original ones. So history is a nebulous kind of a thing.
See, Vidyaranya, Cholas, they are not talked about at all.
Not talked about
Only
at all.
2 sentences.
Quite right.
Mughal is 10 pages.
Yes, quite right. Well, I think some corrections will happen.
It will. No, looking for it in my life.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, once